All right, theoretically, our tech issues should be fine now, but we will find out. Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here. We are going to go over pre-health orientation. There is a lot of content, so I apologize in advance, but we got a lot of ground to cover. So real quickly, just so that everybody knows what we're going to try and attempt to get through in a limited amount of time, is some quick introductions, overview of HealthBeat and resources for students that are pursuing healthcare professions. We'll go over a basic pre-med roadmap to kind of give you an idea of the journey of somebody going to healthcare. Okay. We're going to look at some professional academic considerations for the profession, thinking about experiences. What do we define as important or necessary experiences for students to consider as they pursue healthcare, as well as touch on a little bit of post bachelor's degree education if you need it, as well as some events, resources, and general Q&A. So it is a lot of content to cover, so we're going to go right into it. All right, so if you saw an email from HealthBeat, that is essentially us at the Career Center who do pre-health advising. We do a lot of programs for students. I'll introduce, actually, where's Jade? I'll introduce myself, then hand it over to Jade real quick. So just to give you a little background, my name is Ron Reyes. I'm one of the associate directors at the Career Center. Jade and I run HealthBeat, which is the pre-professional programming for students pursuing healthcare. Some information about myself and why I'm doing this. I'm somebody who's worked in higher education almost 2 decades now, 12 of which has been primarily within admissions. I've also worked within healthcare education roughly, depending on where you want to go with my titles, somewhere between 6 to 9 years. Part of that, before I got here to UCSD, is doing post-baccalaureate education for pre-meds who are trying to get into medical school. So for me, this is a very important thing that we want to go over is long-term planning and really thinking about how do we pursue the profession. With that, I'm going to hand it.
Hey everyone, my name is Jade Frame. So Ron's counterpart, I'm the other associate director for pre-health pre-med advising. I've been here at UCSD around 3.5 years or so. I have a background in neuroscience from UC Riverside. I actually was pre-pharmacy at one point. Decided it wasn't a good fit for me and my personality specifically. Went back to get my master's in counseling with a specialization in college counseling and student services. So I feel like it's a great combination of my knowledge of my experience of pre-health as well as just my knowledge currently. I've been in higher ed as working in higher ed for about 7 years, 7+ years now. So that's just a little bit about me. And with that, I'm gonna hand it to Katie.
Hey everybody, my name is Katie Michaels. I'm the Academic Advising Program Director on campus, which is a fancy way of saying I get to help support all of your academic advisors. Pop quiz, who has an academic advisor? If your hand is not up, you have failed the quiz. So everyone on campus actually has 2 academic advisors. If you do not know who that is, please use these QR codes. You have a major advisor in the department or program that's going to help you with all of your major requirements in your time here. And then you have an advising team in your undergraduate college that will help you with general education, university requirements on the college side. I was never pre-med because I don't like needles, so you all are ahead of me.
Thank you. Besides having your academic advisors, you also have career advisors. So pre-health advising is housed within the Career Center. So this is my team, our team. So just to give you an idea, we have our leadership group to the left. I have to kind of adjust view here. And then we have the advisors on the right side, Jade and I, as part of the pre-grad advising portion of the Career Center. So that being said, the Career Center is where we hold a lot of our programming, events, and advising. So if we ask you to do something in Handshake, it's because it's probably career related, which includes a lot of our pre-professional or healthcare programming that we do for students. That being said, myself, along with the rest of our colleagues at the Career Center, will help many students with a lot of the professional development that you are going to need to do in order to be a good applicant, either for graduate school or getting out into the working world regardless. So that means that we do everything from career exploration, resume and cover letter, LinkedIn networking, mock interviews, salary negotiation, grad app application planning. We also do large events and fairs throughout the year. We do targeted programming based off of professions. So there are a lot of opportunities that you should be utilizing to help with your professional development, especially since experiences are going to be a heavy component that you're going to need to be able to properly communicate as we go into a graduate application, especially for healthcare. So with that, again, HealthBeat is the primary resource that we have through the Career Center specific to pre-health planning and advisement. And it is also where we have a lot of the resources based off of the types of professions that typically students are going to be looking at. So to give you an idea, I'd say roughly 9-ish things that we get asked a lot as far as professions are going to be things like medicine, dentistry, pharmacy, physician assistant or PA, optometry. For my people who are interested in kind of rehabilitation type work, maybe we're looking at PT or OT, so physical therapy or occupational therapy. We also have resources for veterinary, public health, which is it's a much wider area than people think, as well as nursing. So these are kind of some primary areas within the HealthBeat website and resources that have more targeted information based off of the type of profession you're looking to pursue. Okay. So with that in mind, some of the things that we do provide additional support with and what we do is we really think about planning for healthcare from a professional advising standpoint, right? So our primary responsibility is to make sure that you are doing the things necessary to see if this is going to be worth it for you, and then hopefully make sure that you're doing those steps that will help you get you there, right? So that's from exploring and understanding differences between professions. It's looking at professional programming, maybe providing you guides and workshops and things that you could do to navigate towards the profession, as well as giving general guidance and advisement throughout the way. In addition to that, we work not by ourselves, we work with a lot of people to make sure that happens, right? So we have the colleges, we have the different academic units that we work alongside. We also do a lot of cross programming with the health professional schools that are here on campus. We have quite a few. We have our public health school, we have our PA school, our medical school, and our pharmacy school on campus, and we work with all of them when it comes to programming. In addition to that, we also many times will be part of the national organizations that help with advising students to pursue healthcare, as well as working directly with a lot of the healthcare student orgs that happen on campus. So that's kind of the scope of what we handle a lot of times day to day, as well throughout the year. So with that in mind, some things you should start off utilizing. These are very easy to remember, so hopefully 6 points aren't that bad, right? First is healthbeat.ucsd.edu. Just remember that. Very easy. Healthbeat.ucsd.edu. Anything that you see on the slides as far as guides, resources, templates, a lot of that is housed directly on the website. And so if you miss it, that's okay. You can get back to it pretty easily. But that should be like the primary place where you can get initial support. Also on the main page, you can sign up for notifications if you want to get possibly an email or two within the year where you just say, hey, just to let you know, these are going to be the major things that are going to be happening in the upcoming year that you should put on your calendar or be ready for. Besides that, we do a lot of drop-in support. Jade and I are piloting a weekly drop-in hour. We have a resource flyer for that at the end of presentation. If you're kind of curious, basically it's on Wednesdays for an hour. In addition to that, we also will do a drop-in week, typically once you're already done with the first 3 weeks of the academic year. Week 4 academic quarter. During week 4, we typically will have a few extra days where we'll open up more time for students just to ask general questions now that you've had a handle on your schedule. Besides that, in addition to the website, we also have the HealthBeat Instagram page that actually we put a lot of the resources, events, programming that happens on and off campus. So for example, if I get an internship opportunity specific to healthcare, or there's a grant or additional resources that are outside of the normal scope that students are aware of, we also try and put it there just so that you get a heads up. In addition to that, a lot of our programming is recorded. And so we have on the Career Center YouTube channel, the HealthBeat playlist, which is very targeted for healthcare. And so we'll go over things like application strategy. How do I work or communicate my experiences? What are things that are important to understand for a specific profession? So a lot of that kind of information will live on our YouTube playlist. Besides that, some of the workshops that you'll see will happen every quarter for us. So make sure that you keep tabs on the workshops that we do every year. In addition to that, we also partner with student orgs such as HMP3, which is the health, let's see if I get this right, health and medical programs health and medical pre-professional programming, so HMP3. They're one of the largest student orgs that helps us put on 2 healthcare conferences for students every year, right? So that happens Meds Conference in winter quarter, as well as Hope Conference in spring. So Meds at School of Medicine and Hope at SCAG School of Pharmacy. Those are opportunities that students should at least try out once in their academic career. It's a one-day conference where you get to be with other healthcare students, get targeted workshops and programming, usually hear from professionals as well as people in programs about how they're doing with the healthcare profession. So I always like to say, please utilize those resources. They're right there for you. They're right on campus. Besides that, Jade, I, as well as the Career Center, do a lot of one-on-one appointments. So ideally, you've gotten through all the basic information and now you need to kind of drill down on very specific things or need help strategizing around certain things you want to do. That's what the one-on-one appointments that we do provide are for. We have to release them weekly so that if you don't see them right away, that's fine. Check again next week. It is something where it should be a targeted appointment where we really go over necessary things that you are trying to really get a better handle on. Besides that, last thing I'll say is there's a ton of resources and organizations on campus, right? Within the last couple of years, we went from 16 student organizations dedicated to healthcare professions to 27. That's a lot. So don't join all of them, but at least try out 1 or 2 of them, right? See if there's healthcare professionals out there that are other students that you want to do a project around. Some of them will give you networking opportunities. Some of them will give you opportunities to do clinical work, get into the community, do various things around healthcare that might be helpful for you. So I always say these are kind of the basics that we should really be aware of as we get started here so that it makes the journey towards healthcare a lot more manageable for you guys. So with that in mind, next thing that we're going to cover is a general roadmap of what it looks like to pursue a profession like medicine. So buckle up. This is a lot of timeline information. Don't be overwhelmed, but I'm going to go through the process of what it should look like or what students should be aware of, and then we'll drill down on some of the specifics in the next couple of slides. Okay, so first thing, most healthcare professions are going to have requirements that you need to complete. And you need to get them done before you can apply. I'm just going to say it right now. Get all your requirements done before we apply. Otherwise, it's not going to help you on application. So for my medical students, this is what it looks like, right? I'll go over those in more detail. Again, this is a general overview of what is a very long timeline. So during your undergraduate career, you are working on, hopefully during the about 4 years worth of academics that you are doing to get your bachelor's degree. You are going to work on all your prerequisites and work on your experiences, right? Towards the tail end of that time, we are then going to start thinking about doing our graduate level exam if we're applying to a healthcare graduate school. For medicine, it is the MCAT, which is a very intensive test. To give you an idea of my baseline expectation for most students studying for the MCAT, we usually say bare minimum study hours is around 200 to 300 hours, bare minimum. If I want to break it down to what I see a lot of students as a recommendation for study habits, when my background's in human behavior, I like to look at very good habits. I would break it down even further. So let's think about, 3 to 4 months of studying. In those 3 to 4 months of studying every week consistently, I would be thinking about 15 to 20 hours of study time. If I break that down even further, that might mean I'm doing about 4 to 5 days a week studying 4 hours a day. And that usually amounts to being basically a part-time job leading up to doing the MCAT, okay? So that is kind of some base considerations that I would have when thinking about it. But during that time that we're studying, we're hopefully doing things like 10 to 15 practice tests, flashcards, and intensive content review so that we're ready for that test. Now, once we get our experiences done, we have our MCAT completed. The next thing in our journey and process is the 1-year-long application process for medicine, okay? So 1 year long. I will go over that timeline in detail. Some quick tips and things that we usually see with students applying to professions like medicine. Usually it's somewhere between 20 to 30 schools that students are applying to. I would say if we're doing pretty good with our school list and keeping it pretty tight, it's probably closer to 20 to 25. If we have some concerns or have the resources to cast a wider net, maybe it's 25 to 30 schools. Okay. Besides that, the other thing that I would be thinking about when I'm preparing for the 1 year long process is that it is going to be a lot of multiple steps. It's hurry up, get it done, and then wait for the next step, and then do the same thing multiple times. Once we get through the application process, assuming things go well and we get accepted, the next thing that we are doing in our path to being a doctor is doing our formal training and education. So that is going to typically be in a traditional format, 2 years of didactic, which is a fancy way of saying lectures plus discussion, plus potentially in-person class discussion around simulation and case study. So that is didactic, your first couple of years. Your next couple of years are going to be clinical rotations. And that is going to be where you really understand all the different areas a doctor could potentially do, right? So you are the most super of generalists during your clinical rotations because you're going to get exposed to everything, right? Once we get through all of that, we are then going to be able to do our residency. So residency is basically that additional time where you're not 100% being paid and treated like a doctor until you get through the last of your clinical training. And you do your final testing at the end of that residency. So for my people doing shorter specializations, short is 3 years. So like internal medicine, family practice, those are like 3-year stints before you can do your last boards exam and then fully practice as a physician, right? Without any strings attached. For my more specialized folks, like say I'm going into a subspecialty in surgery, that's probably a 5+ year process for that particular person to specialize into that area, right? If we happen to have my unicorns that are going to do MD, PhD, so they're attaching 2 more years of education in addition to those 4 years, we're now looking at a 10+ year track in medicine, okay? So that is the journey of somebody going in and becoming a doctor, right? This is a long trip, right? We're looking 7 to 10 years just in your medical education, not including everything that you're doing before that. So I like to say this is a marathon that we are signing up for. So with that in mind, here's a small chunk of the marathon, which is the actual application timeline, right? This is a rough estimate, right? Give or take, plus or minus a day, depending on IT and the calendar year, but this gives a very basic idea of the process of the application itself. So just to break it down point by point, application almost starts the same time every year. May 1st is typically around the time it opens. That time you can fill out all the information, but you can't submit yet. You can submit in 4 weeks after that. Once we click submit, what are we submitting? We are submitting our personal statement, our list of works and activities, which is typically about anywhere up to 15 works and activities. Those works and activities, we're highlighting 3 of them as most meaningful, which means we're going to put a lot of extra information that admissions should be aware of. Besides that, we are also manually inputting our entire academic history. We're submitting our official transcripts. We are submitting our MCAT score, and we are submitting our letters of recommendation. Side note on letters of recommendation, base expectation for a medical student is 3 to be able to submit for the MCAT, to submit for the AMCAS application or the medical application. Most students target about 4 to 6 letters of recommendation. The AMCAS application system lets you upload up to 10, okay? That is all primary application when we submit. Once we submit primary application, it takes about 2 to 4 weeks to move on to the next step, where the system has verified that you did not lie on your academic record and you are now verified and schools can look at you. At this point, we hit what's called secondary application, which is where students are going to basically fill out additional essays for every single school that they apply to, that they are moving forward to on secondary application. So that means, say I have 25 schools I'm applying to, I would say average about 2 essays worth of work for each of those schools. So that's like 50 essays worth of work that we potentially are doing for those 25 schools. And their expectation is from admissions, if we're a priority, you're going to fill out those essays within 1 to 2 weeks for our institution. So that means for anybody in that part of the process that our top priority for the schools that we're applying to, we're getting those done in 1 to 2 weeks. And then for everyone else, we're just trying to get it in as soon as possible. So we have to be okay with that. Once we get through that part, interview season is going to be from September all the way through February. And the sooner we get through those other parts of the application, the sooner we can be considered for the interview season. Once we get through that, assuming we interview well, waitlist and acceptance notifications happen mid-March through April 30th. April 30th is a key date because if you've been accepted somewhere, they'll say, lock it in, or we'll release your application. Because if somebody has been accepted to more than one school, those schools want to know where are you not going so that they can offer those spots to people off waitlist. That also means for the people who are trying to get off waitlist, they usually get off waitlist mid-April through May. So if you just got off waitlist May, that means your application cycle literally was from May to May, 1 year. All right. So that is the application year. Now, I'm not expecting you to remember any of this by heart, but this is just to give you an idea of the level of detail and depth that you're going to have to work towards as you work towards going to medical school. Okay. So some professional and academic considerations that we should work on and talk through for the profession, just to give you an idea. Now, I'm not going to ask you to memorize any of this. This is just to give you some comparison and understanding of different healthcare professions and opportunities, right? So one of the things I like to point out is even though people have a lot of assumptions about GPAs, the ranges are quite different and more varied than you would think. And that's because an application is a lot more than a grade and a test, right? I just walked you through a whole year-long application process. You would, if we think about what I just said, the only quantitative part of that whole process, realistically, was that first part. Everything in that year after that was all qualitative. So that's why I say, GPA only tells a small fraction of the admissions process. But it's a good reference point for a lot of students to kind of understand that, okay, depending on the profession I sign up for, it's more than just targeting a grade, right? I can actually manage to get into dentistry with a 3.2. That's fine, maybe. It just depends on what do I want to do, where do I want to apply, am I competitive in a lot of other ways as far as experience and being able to talk about it, right? So I like to point that out. Now we're going to go into frequently asked questions. And some of them are going to be academic based. So I'm going to drag Katie over to help me answer some of these. I get this question a lot. What major do I choose? I'll say this much from the admissions perspective. We do not care. What we care about is, did you perform well in an area of study that theoretically you have a lot of interest in, right? A dean once said this to me very clearly. If you say, I am motivated and value this area and I'm going to study it and I'm going to do well, theoretically, I'm saying the exact same thing when I talk about healthcare. I am motivated and I'm valuing healthcare and I'm going to do well, right? There should be some demonstration of things that we are motivated to do. We're actually going to do well. And so from the admissions perspective, you can be any major. We don't care. Perform well, do your requirements, show us why this matters, right? So that is kind of an initial logic, I would say, from the admission side. And no, Katie, you have some thoughts.
So from the academic side, I will tell you, we don't care either. Your major does not matter. Please don't double major. That is another soapbox I will get on another day. But you are not going to get into med school just because you have a certain major or a certain double major. Now, part of what I want to show you is that you can make your major requirements, your college requirements, and your elective requirements work for your pre-health path, regardless of whatever major and whatever college you are in. So the first thing I want to demonstrate,
Let us go.
maybe, is a typical traditional, what you might think of, science major. So if you are a biology major, I would also say this applies to global health and to public health, chemistry, any of those sciencey majors where you have math and science requirements automatically built in. They are requirements for your major. You must take them. On this slide, those yellow stars you see is where that exact overlap is. There are also college general education requirements which vary across your 8 colleges. And depending on your college, there will also be some of those requirements that are exactly direct overlap with your pre-health prerequisite courses. Now, this student path here is a Revell student in biology. So it's going to look a little different based on your college, but this is just to show you lots of overlap, lots of built-in overlap, I should say, yellow stars. However, there are still additional courses that if you were pre-med, you would need. Over on the right, in little tiny red print, is the organic chemistry lab and also the sociology and psychology courses that are recommended to take before you take the MCAT. Those are not automatically built in, so you would still need to figure out a way to take those classes, even if you are the perfect cookie cutter biology Revelle student. How many biology Revelle students do we have here? I used to work in Revelle, there are a lot of you, I love you. But if you are not a Revelle biology major, that's okay. Because you can be, as I said, literally any major. So the second one I want to show you is an example where there is 0 math and science required for this major, ethics studies. Now, many of our humanities and social science majors do not have math and science requirements. But again, overlapping with your college, and in this case, we have Marshall College for my Marshall students. Awesome. You have a different set of general education requirements than Revelle. You still see some yellow stars up here. What this plan demonstrates, though, is that you will have electives, regardless of your major and college combination. You have to have electives because everybody needs at least 180 credits to graduate. So with some really good planning, you can put in pre-med courses into an ethnic studies major, not delay your graduation at all. In this case, there's one additional course in red at the very bottom. There would be one upper division biology class you would need to figure out how to fit in. But with planning, you can definitely make this work. Where are my transfer students? Hi, transfers. Welcome. I'm naming that these plans that I just showed you are 4-year plans built for first-year incoming students. Now, transfer students also have, if you go to this website, it's plans.ucsd.edu, we have transfer plans available. Yours is going to need to be more significantly tailored based on the credits you brought in, but the same theory applies, and it really doesn't matter about your major or your college, because with planning, you can make pre-med, pre-health paths work with any college, any major. Quick shout out if you're like, I don't want to be a bio major, I don't want to be a global health major, I don't really like public health, I want to do something cool, something different, something unique. Quick shout out to the majors that I've listed up here, including biological anthropology. We've got pharmacological chemistry. Did you know that we have a specialization in healthy aging within human developmental sciences? Now, this is not an exhaustive list, but this is just to illustrate, we have some pretty unique stuff on campus. So back to Rob's point about pick something you're passionate about and something that you are really interested in studying, because you do not have to be a science major in order to pursue pre-health. So you're like, that's awesome, but how do I make my own plan? Because I'm not a Revelle bio major or a Marshall ethnic studies major. So on our advising website, you take a quick snap of this QR code. This is going to take you to a webpage that will help you create your own plan. If you are a transfer student, I strongly encourage you to meet with your major advisor first, schedule an appointment for the fall, get that plan built. First year students, not quite as much of a rush, aim for like winter quarter. But these steps will help you create your own plan and some of the things to think about as you're starting to put together all those pieces.
Ooh, AP, IB credit. Out of curiosity, how many people here have AP or IB credit? Probably a lot of you. Yeah, that's what I thought. So we had a lot of questions on that. I'm going to say some admission things. Katie's going to say some academic things. And these are just general considerations and understanding with profession. So I have to kind of address the elephant in the room because there's always going to be questions around this. So first thing is, I'll go over a little bit. Actually, no, I'll let you take on the academic stuff and then I'll wrap it up.
So first off, if you do not have any AP or IB credit coming in, neither did I. We can compare high schools later if you would like to, but you're not alone. If you're like, oh my God, I'm so far behind because I don't have that, you are not behind. With AP and IB credit, there are 2 charts. These are based upon your score on that exam and how UCSD awards credit based on that exam score. But I just want to point out, this is a UCSD decision only. your friends at other schools, based on how they bring in credit, they're getting credit for different courses based on their scores. So you're gonna see your UCSD score, or I should say UCSD course, that is equivalent to that score on your degree audit or on your academic history. One thing to know is that you are not getting a letter grade for that credit. It shows up as a P grade, which is a pass grade, and that has no impact on your UC GPA, positively or negatively, if you just get the credit and the pass grade.
All right. So the other things that we want to think about and understand. So first thing that I'm going to say is, from an admissions perspective, you're going to see a lot of different things because there are, for example, with medicine, 160 medical schools. It is a miracle enough that they at least agree on prerequisite courses. Everything else is subject to interpretation. So one of the first things I'm going to tell everyone is this about AP credits in general. Some schools will take them right out the gate. Other schools will say, demonstrate that you are proficient in some way, shape, or form, despite having AP credit. So taking additional college courses within related areas, doing advanced coursework that demonstrates proficiency, also fine. There might be a small handful of schools that are going to be nitpicky and say, we are going to ask you to do that all over again because we can afford to do that with our 10,000 applications and our 4.0 expectation, right? Like there are some crazy schools like that that might ask you that. What I tell everybody is probably pick something else, right? Like there are other schools out there that are going to be much better suited for you, or that you can make a much better case just performing well with all the other requirements that you have to do. In addition to that, you are able to take courses that you've already received credit for here at UCSD. I know Katie has more to say about that, but from an admissions perspective, we're always going to say, prove to us that you are proficient, right? That's the first and foremost logic. Now, there are going to be some schools that are going to be more nitpicky. There is a handful of dentistry schools I usually have arguments with about AP transfer units, but I'm not going to get into that. But there are going to be a lot of other opportunities where if you really want to just redo a course, don't do it here. Do it at the community college if you actually need to do it for a very specific admissions school or office. Most of the time, they'll just rather have you demonstrate proficiency in some other way. Okay? Anything else on policy or taking courses?
The thing I will add from an academic perspective is, I put it up on the screen here, this is the UCSD policy on the repetition of courses. A student may not repeat a course for which a grade of any A, B, or C, or pass is recorded on the transcript. So what this means is that you are technically not allowed to repeat a course here for which you already have AP or IB credit. If you do that with your AP IB credit, because the enrollment system won't stop you, but if you do it, you are not earning the units and you are not getting a grade that will factor into your UCG. It's just the academics.
And then just a heads up, because of that, if I got a good grade, but I have 0 units, it's not going to show up on application as far as part of your GPA or your calculations. So really, I would avoid doing any sort of repeat work if at all possible. And I would only do it in very specific circumstances. Like, say, for example, okay, I got a D or a C- in organic chemistry, probably going to redo that at the community college at this point. Hopefully, we don't have that happen. But if we do have something like that happen, we'll have to consider that at a later point. The main thing is usually in most circumstances, students are going to focus on all the other classes that they have left to complete. And then you probably have the answer to this already, which is, can I take community college courses? Is a frequent question that we get. From an admissions perspective, absolutely fine, right? There are some students that are, different majors, and maybe they weren't pursuing healthcare until junior year, and they're missing some classes, and so they decide to take it at the community college. That is fine. There might be some students that don't need some of these requirements to graduate and would rather get them done over the summer when they have a little bit of extra time, or maybe it's like a site course that they want to take online, no big deal, right? And so from an admissions perspective, that is not a big deal. You can take it. The big thing I ask is, if you are going to do it, perform well. Don't tack it on in a way that is going to make you perform worse, right? I had one student told me, I'm going to enroll in community college. At the same time, I'm fully enrolled at UCSD. Please do not do that. I've had a couple students try and do that. It usually does not end nicely. Besides that, at least from an academic perspective, I know if you do take courses, Katie has a few words typically about what you should do if you end up taking community college courses, which is.
Always check with your academic advisor first. So you can send them a quick message through the virtual advising center, which is just vac.ucsd.edu. If you do not know what the VAC is, we have totally failed you in orientation, but that's beside the point. But always reach out to your academic advisor, because depending what you think that class is transferring in for, it may or may not count for a general education or a major or a minor requirement. But also, depending how it transfers in, especially if it's part of a semester sequence, you only take part of it here, it can actually affect your UCSD credits if you are duplicating credits in any way. So please, please, please always check on the front end with your academic advisor, who are the people who are ultimately certifying your degree when you graduate.
Perfect. All right, we kind of answered this already. I got a C-. What should I do? Well, that's tricky, right? I would say do everything you can to perform well in every other instance of the course and the information. If you do have a graduate program that is going to be Sicklers, then we would consider either post-graduation or over the summer taking it elsewhere to show proficiency. Again, this is kind of more of a last-ditch effort to kind of make up for it on certain institutions that are more strict, right? I'm citing dentistry as one of them. So I have this question all the time. I have a 3.1. Should I just quit? No, please don't quit. What I would like to have is a conversation about where exactly are we in doing everything, right? If we are early in our academic career, we have a lot of time to show improvement. I will say GPA is a game of diminishing return, which means the more units we throw at it, the less we can make significant impacts on how well we do, right? But it doesn't mean that we can't demonstrate or show improvement over a period of time. Admissions does look at this. The phrase that we use all the time in admissions is academic trend or upward trajectory if possible, right? Those are the things that we are looking for. Besides that, we also say with a lot of applicants, maybe something happened. Maybe there was a life circumstance. Maybe they just did not adjust well early in their academic career. There's a number of things that could happen where somebody gets a dip and then it affects their GPA for a very long time. We understand that. But what we are going to look for is if there has been noticeable improvement over the period of time, so that at least they end strong with where they are academically, right? And this is also sometimes where students will take additional classes elsewhere after they graduate, just to so that they are in a better place now when it comes to certain coursework. So it's going to require some things you need to get used to, which situations depend, and there's nuance, right? There's a lot of things where we want to have a more deeper conversation about how we are doing, how we are managing our time, and are we okay doing additional work in order to get to a place where we're going to be successful enough and feel good about applying. The answer is we can get there, but I always have to mention that since we do meet with quite a few students. So speaking of academics, some of the things that I'm just going to quickly touch on is samples of how classes are done based off of profession. This is just a quick demonstration of how things can look, right? So on one side, we have things that I could say, ad nauseum very easily, like pre-med requirements, about a year's worth of biology, a year's worth of chemistry, a year's worth of organic chemistry, a biochemistry course, a couple calculus courses, a statistics course, a series of physics, usually a year of general education physics, right? Like those are things that are by and large the baseline expectation of medical school, right? Then we have on the other side courses that are either more helpful for specific professions that call it out directly, or additional courses that a pre-med could take that would be beneficial either for the MCAT or for helping them study and be comfortable not really comfortable, but be better prepared for the first year of medical education. So again, these are going to be on the Help Me website, but just to give you an idea, there are things like genetics, physiology, microbiome, cell bio, physiology, psych and soc, like Katie mentioned. That's actually on the MCAT, is psychological and sociological foundations, in particular towards medicine. So these are all helpful things. They are not always required, but they can be very beneficial for students. Now, where they could be required is if we're talking other professions, right? So for example, my PA people or people who are interested in PA, you are going to need to do physiology lecture and lab, anatomy lecture and lab, microbiome lecture and lab. I just know that for a fact. Same thing for nursing. For my PT, OT students, I'm probably gonna have to do physiology lecture and lab, anatomy lecture and lab. And then usually they have like a nutrition and a couple of exercise science type coursework that they would prefer to see, which is its own can of worms to try and get done. So that's to say that there are different considerations depending on what profession we do end up targeting. And we want to be aware of that. It is not a one size fits all approach when it comes to graduate education and requirements. With that, we can transition to course load.
So bear with us. We have about 40 minutes left with dedicated time for Q&A. So we're gonna cover a good chunk of the application, which are the rest, we'll cover the rest of the courses and we'll cover extracurriculars. Okay, so for courses, just so you know, 12 to 16 units is full-time, as you may have already know. And so just to give you some context within, you know, understanding extracurricular experiences, and I think the biochem orientation happening, or did that already happen? Maybe. Yeah, something might happen. Either way. So for every unit that you spend in or every hour that you spend in your course, that is 1 unit, right? So a 12-unit course will be 12 hours total per week that you're spending in class. For every hour that you spend in class, or for every unit rather, you need 2 to 3 hours of study time outside of class, okay? So if you kind of add everything up, if you're taking a 12-unit course, that means that you'll spend about 24 hours outside of class minimum, plus that 12 hours in class, so it's about 36 hours. We'll just round it up to 40. So that's like a 40-hour week, right? If you're actually studying for your courses, you know. And then on top of that, you want to think about where your extracurriculars fit in. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of context of like what that looks like in like, say, a typical work week. So I would just say with all of that, just remember to pace yourself. So who here is planning to take a gap year? Raise your hand. Okay. Who here has no idea what a gap year is? Okay, so most of us know what a gap year is. I'm still going to explain it, all right? It is basically the time spent between graduating and matriculating or enrolling into your institution, your healthcare professional school institution. So medical school in this case. So it depends on what your timeline is looking like, how your extracurriculars are looking. And that will kind of help inform you of if you're going to take a gap year or not. I will say most people do take gap years. I know only like, 20% of you raised your hands. 73% of students are taking at least a year before applying. Sometimes up to 2. And when you get 3 or 4 years, you'll probably start to understand why that is. It's just a lot of, the timeline is really long. So it takes some time to just get everything done and also just grow as a professional and be a competitive applicant, right? Because it's not just, as Ron says, the coursework, it's so much more than that, right? The quantitative is only the first part of your application. The rest is your experiences, letters of recommendation, your personal statement, right? Everything like that. So this is your sample 4-year plan. Won't spend too much time on this just because, we have other things to cover, but this is just kind of what that might look like if you're studying for your MCAT, like your junior year. You take your MCAT, your senior year, you submit in June. I wouldn't take your MCAT later than March, just to give yourself time to target schools. And, retake it if you need to. Although I prefer one and done if you can do it, but yeah, if you need to retake it, you can. This is what a gap year, 2 gap years looks like, just kind of extended. You're basically just getting more experience during that time, which actually does help you look more competitive. So we here in the Career Center do like gap years, but we understand it's not for everybody. So pacing and self-care, just making sure you know your grades matter, of course, but understanding that there are support services, counseling and psychological services, transferring into college itself, trying to do your own laundry, cook your own meals, make your own friends, get along with your roommates, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like all of that is a lot. It's transition, right? And so that can be very difficult. So, get support with tutoring, go to office hours, make sure you're doing all your classes. Counseling and psychological services is great for just one-on-one counseling. and kind of just talking about those mental health challenges that we may encounter. The Triton Transfer Hub for my transfer students, as well as Oasis for my first gen students. We have a ton of resources on campus, which you probably went through in your orientations and, you know, while you were kind of setting yourself up to come here. So just make sure you use those. The people that use their resources are the ones, or students who use those resources are the ones who are more successful. The students who get involved with student works, which we'll talk a little bit about later, are also more successful. You want to get involved and you want to use your resources. There's just so many studies on this. In my master's program, I learned so much about this. So I talk to my students about this all the time. Especially if you're first gen and this is your first, you don't really have anyone to rely on. Now you know, right? Get involved. So for experiences, most of us know, many of us may know, that you do need extracurriculars when you apply to medical school. So the 5 different areas are healthcare / clinical, shadowing, research, leadership, yeah. And service. So, I'm out of order. Sorry, this is our second presentation of the day, and the first one was very long. But yes, these are 5 different areas. Feel free to scan this QR code. It will lead you to our experiential opportunities, which is a great place to start. We get students asking, like, where do we get started? How do I get experiences? Start with our list first. And, if you go, get involved with student orgs, you're going to hear things from your friends, and from your peers who are also involved. All right. So what's the difference between service versus clinical? I just want to make this distinction. So service is working with a vulnerable population to make a long-term impact. That could be working with, refugees, for example, working with homeless population, low-income families, etc. Some organizations at UCSD include the Mustard Seed Project, Education Corps, and Homeless Heal. On that list, the experiential list that you saw on the slide before, have a service tab at the bottom of that, and that will show you, some service opportunities. Clinical experience is very specific, and I would argue the most important for medicine. Most medical students, we see around 300 hours. This is the only time I'm going to give you hours. Okay, so 300 hours going into medical school is kind of what we're seeing competitive students going with. Clinical experience is working directly with a patient in a healthcare setting, hopefully contributing to their healthcare outcomes, providing service or education, right? So it's very specific. Students ask, oh, is this clinical? Is that clinical? Like when I meet in my one-on-ones, and I usually ask, were you working directly with patients? And if they say yes, it's usually clinical. Some examples are emergency medical technician, certified nurse assistant, phlebotomy, medical scribing. Some organizations are emergency medical services at UCSD, Flying Samaritans, and IHC. So all of these are on our list. You can also go to Center for Student Involvement.ucsd.edu and look at some clubs and orgs that you might be interested in to start with, because we had a lot of questions about that as well at the end. Shadowing is the other one. A lot of you have heard about shadowing. I recommend it mostly for letters of recommendation. We talked a little bit about that. Does anyone know how many letters you need for medical school specifically? 4 to 6, yeah. So 4 to 6 letters, up to 10, I think Ron covered that actually. And so minimum 3, we want you to have 1 from a physician. 2 science professors, 1 non-science professor, a supervisor, an MD. That's 6. And so that's kind of over recommending, but you kind of get the gist. So I would always have a physician if you're applying to medical school, write you a letter. And we'll have time for Q&A at the end. Oh yes, I can repeat that. So kind of over recommending, we like to see 2 science professors, 1 non-science professor, an MD/physician. I missed one, a PI if you're doing research.
Or a supervisor.
And then on top of that, a supervisor. I would say a supervisor from like community service or something like that. Someone that knows you well, that knows your character, right? So yeah, this is just a great way to develop mentorship. Make sure I'm staying on time. Leadership is not about the title. It's basically just showing different qualities, and we'll talk about core competencies going into the medical profession. But things like communication, decision making, responsibility, team building, problem solving. These are all things that qualities that you need to display when you apply, so you stand out. And so we're just trying to make sure you're well rounded by showing you these 5 different categories. Research is a big one because we are an R1 institution. And we're research heavy. A lot of students want to get into it and just kind of try their hand. Believe it or not, it is not required for medical school unless you're pursuing an MD, PhD, which then you need about 5,000 hours of research plus 10,000 word essay in addition to your primaries, right? So it is very specific route. And so if that's something that you're interested in, that's totally fine. We don't see it a lot, but we do see it sometimes. And so I would say the big benefit of research though, if you are not pursuing an MD PhD, is letters of recommendation, right? Because we talked maybe 4 to 6. And I would say the 2 limiting steps of applying to medical school are your sometimes GPA, because once it falls, it's really, you have to do extra steps to get your GPA back up. So that's one limiting step in applying to grad school. The second limiting step would be, letters of recommendation. Because once you don't build those relationships, it's really hard to build those bridges and get strong letters, right? I don't want you to have generic letters, I want you to have strong letters. Amazing. So I'm going to hand it off to Katie. We stand next to each other.
We're just gonna be bots here. You still hear me? It's so weird. This is like the weirdest mic. Can you tell I'm tired? All right. So if you were starting to feel like, oh my God, there's no way I am ever going to be able to do all this in my time here, and I feel really overwhelmed, and I don't even really know what's going on right now, and I'm tired, and who are these people? I want to give you a tip for how you can double dip a little bit. So as we've been talking about experiences and getting some experiences outside of the classroom, I want to encourage you to actually double dip with experiences in the classroom that you'll get credit for. So there are 3 colleges in particular, 6th, 7th, and 8th, who have general education requirements that you could use to tailor a project, an experience, a placement in the health world. So if you're in those colleges, check out their websites to learn more about their experiential learning, high impact, and critical community engagement requirements. We also have electives, as I mentioned earlier. You can use your electives regardless of major in college to do an internship or to do some research or to get some actual credits under your belt while also getting that experience that Jay talked about. And then we also have independent majors and minors. So if you're super passionate about something that we don't have a major in, for example, medical humanities, you could create your own major or minor to piece that together. So for those things, you would talk to your college advisors. And then on the major side, there are a few majors that have required experiences, usually in your senior year, that again, you can use that placement, that project, that experience in a community site or a health setting. So that would be the global health major, the human developmental sciences major, and also public health have very intentional, practical, hands-on experiences that students have to get. You can do an internship regardless of major. Some majors like biology, chemistry, global health have internships built into their department. So you would want to talk with the department advisors about that. But if you're not that major, you can also do an internship through the academic internship program. Internships, you can even get paid at the same time. Just putting this on your radar as a way to like, oh, I get credit to do that. Finally, research and honors thesis. So this is if you have something that you're really interested in, particularly if you find that super cool faculty mentor who will also write you a letter of recommendation, you can get credit to do that. So for any of those things on the right side, you would want to talk to your department advisor about how to get started. Just a heads up, sometimes it can take 1, 2, or even 3 quarters to plan for this stuff. So start early in something you're interested in.
No. I get power. We're good.
Great. So I mentioned competencies a minute ago, professional competencies in order to being well-rounded. A lot of people ask, how do I stand out on the medical school or my graduate school application? It's really, not only meeting the competencies, but just understanding your why. Having a mission statement on that experience tracker that you may have scanned QR code for, or I'll show you the experience tracker in a second. I may not do it. There's a mission statement tab in how to develop it. It's a values, a vision, and a goal statement for yourself personally and or professionally. And it is basically the anchor of your application. I see a lot of applications, and the ones that don't really have like a really solid thesis or an anchor of why am I doing this, but very specifically why, and how do my experiences align with my mission statement. If I don't see like, it's like an art, right? I don't see a common thread, all the puzzle pieces don't really like fit together to make like a big picture. So that your thesis statement or your mission statement rather is your big picture, and all of your experiences are your puzzle pieces that make up that picture. I really hope that makes sense. So here are some competencies. Most of them fall in the professional competencies. This is as outlined by the AAMC. I actually like to use it for other professions as well, including PA, nursing, etc., dentistry. Things like cultural awareness, humility, responsibility, compassion, resilience, and adaptability is a big one, right? So if you encounter challenges in your life, what does that look like? How has that shaped you? You want to talk about that? It's distance travel, it's lessons learned. And so that's really important as well. Teamwork. And so medical schools and graduate schools are looking at for a combination of experiences in order to show all of these competencies. Okay, so this is what I was talking about before, tracking your experiences. That is one tab, but we also have a mission statement tab on there if you're interested in creating one. We got questions in the past session like, oh, what should I start with? And, we gave you a list of things to start with, but I would say get your mission statement together so you know what you want to focus on and you're more targeted with your experiences. Yeah. Cool. Okay, so planning for opportunities, I would say, just to kind of summarize this, make sure that you start looking for opportunities. I would say, your summer after your first year, if you are a first year student. If you're a transfer student, start looking for opportunities after this quarter. So focus on academics first. And meet with one of us, meet with a health need advisor, meet with your academic advisor. And some examples of opportunities are study abroad, internships, different leadership roles. We got some questions about study abroad. Please go to the study abroad office if you have study abroad specific questions, but we can answer some of them. And I would say it's quality over quantity. And we also get a lot of questions, should I do a lot of things or should I do like a few things? I would say depth versus breadth. First, focus on one or two things that you stick with, go deep with for like at least a year or two, maybe your whole time here. The rest you can try out to gain experience and meet those competencies and just see like who you are as a person, right? So it's a mixture of both. And so I kind of already talked about this, but just to kind of cover it again, create a personal plan, join a student org, Center for Student Involvement. Please follow our Facebook and Instagram for our events. There are 10,000 of you and Ron and myself and some other folks, Katie and folks who are helping academic advising team. But really, we need you to come to our events. One-on-ones is not the first thing we're pushing right now because it can, there's a lot of students. So actually, technically, we cannot meet with all 10,000, even all 4 or 5,000, right? So we do our best, of course, but we have drop-in hours, we have events where there's only, say, 30 people. You come up to us at the end and we get FaceTime and we get to answer your questions as well. And then after you do that, please make a one. Okay, so there's a contingency here. We just want to make sure we're answering your questions in a time. We talked about summer opportunities, identify your why, and focus on academics. So this is just a summary of everything that we've already talked about. We're not gonna go too deep into post-bac education because we want time for questions because we have to leave right at 5. But basically, post-bac education is completed after you graduate. So hence the post-baccalaureate. It helps you improve your GPA. Not everyone will do this. In fact, most people won't really do this, but if your GPA drops far enough or you didn't take pre-med classes and you need to kind of take all of your classes, this is a great way to do it just because it helps strengthen your application for your GPA. It's pretty rigorous. You're taking medical school level courses before you actually get into medical school. And so most people who do a post-bac and are successful, they are getting into med school. Like very high chances, like 80% plus chance of getting into med school if you're doing a post-bac, you do well in your post-bac. So just know, we just want to show your options, like if your grades do drop and you just feel like you need other options, definitely consider that. There are career changers and academic enhancers. Won't go too deep into this, but there are just different types of post-bac programs, as well as special master's programs. Special master's programs are typically for getting more research, getting a faculty letter, pointing on your clinical. It's not really for boosting your undergrad GPA at all because it's a master's program. So if you're doing that to boost your undergrad GPA, you're not doing the right thing. You should have done a post-bac instead. So just kind of, you know, the other option is informal, unstructured, going back to the community college and retaking coursework. But usually we have students kind of doing the formal structured routes, either the post-bac or the special masters. So here are final tips. It's a marathon and not a race, you know? So it's everything that we've covered and talked about, so I won't be redundant here. But one thing I will say is find a mentor. My medical students, my grads, or my pre-health students even who are successful, they generally have a mentor that they ask questions. Again, like you might meet with Ron and I, we'll support. But if you have a mentor, you can text them, you can call them, you can ask them, you know, what was your experience? I actually personally have not applied to medical school, neither has Ron. We applied to grad school, right? We know a lot about admissions. But someone, I know a lot of medical students and their advice is just, it's very specific, right? You know, oh, I took this class with this person, I took these classes together, this is exactly how I studied, this is how long it took me to figure out my process, like it's very specific advice. And we have PAMS. PAMS, what is the acronym?
Oh, Lord, I can't remember.
Physician. It's basically
Physician.
medical students who give advice to undergrads. And we are trying to get them to come to our drop-in hours, but they also have their own organization. PAMS, you can just Google PAMS UCSD, PAMS UCSD. That's one organization.
Oh, they're on Instagram.
I'm sad we didn't mention that. But yeah, that's one org. Otherwise, you can just go on LinkedIn. We have a lot of networking workshops that we do through the Career Center. And we talk about, you know, how you make contact with mentors and professionals. And that's like we don't have time for that. That's a whole nother, you know, presentation. But yes, that is it's a soft skill that you need to have, learning how to connect with people and build relationships. So yeah, that's one of the final ones, upcoming events. We talked about QA hour. Ron mentioned this in the beginning. Wednesdays, 1:30 to 2:30 in the Horizon Room. Feel free to scan that QR code. Just an easy way to drop in and ask us questions, especially this first quarter when there's a lot of questions coming in. And then the next one is fall 2025 career fairs on our website, career.ucsd.edu. We also have events coming up to help you prepare for the career fairs. A lot of people are like, I don't know how to prepare. Even if you show up, that's fine. But if you want to make the most out of it, maybe get an internship early on, feel free to come to our events before the week before, or the week of rather. We have some prep and we have drop-in hours for that as well. Everything's on our list. I see Ron scratching his head and edging, you know, pushing me on. So I'm going to go to questions now. Really quick. How do we want to do this? Did you want to make the announcement? You said it really well before.
You know that some of you probably really want to leave, but we are going to ask you to stay if you can, because otherwise it's going to be really noisy. So if you need to leave, just please do it quietly, because we are going to answer questions in one large group. There is also an exit at the back if you are closer to the back and need to leave. But if you have questions, please raise your hand and we're going to answer them, so with that we can do this more efficiently.
Okay, I think we're gonna go around the mic. You want to go around the mic?
Yeah.
So we have a hand here. You're gonna have the project. Hello? Yeah, project. Louder? Yeah.
I took a lot of geography classes at like my high school. And I feel like you guys talked about how
like, community college classes are not that rigorous and med schools don't have like. Love them. So what if I took a lot of those classes and like I'm done with them and I can add on, like, for example, I'm going to add classes. Medical schools do not care if you took classes at the community college, I will tell you that, most of them. Now, and this is for my transfer students too, if there's medical schools that maybe behind the scenes, for whatever reason, don't love community college sports, which is few and far between, you have to question if that's even a medical school that you want to go to, if that's a good fit for you and your values, right? If you benefited from the community college system. Don't worry about that. All the stuff that we talked about outside of the qualitative stuff, that's like 65-70% of your application. It just doesn't matter enough. It just doesn't. Now, if it's between you and someone who, you guys are identical, and then they took all their classes at the UC, maybe they'd have an edge up, but it just never comes down to that. It just never comes down to that. It comes down to all the other aspects of your application. Don't worry about it.
I have a question.
Yeah.
At the medical, uh, medical school application, in slots for extra,
Yes,
is it required to fill out all of them?
no. You do not need to fill out all 15 required,
Said, over quality.
yes, quality over quantity. So I'd rather you have average is 10 or 11 experiences that we're, so here's another stat for you, 10 or 11 experiences is what we're seeing. And how you enter them, that's way down the road. Just do whatever, capture whatever works for you as far as like your competencies and your values and kind of what we want to focus on. And then by the time you apply, you can kind of see how many you have, but like, even if you have 8, you're probably so good. It's just like, how are you crafting, again, it's art versus science. How are you crafting your application? How are you telling your story? So yeah, you don't have to use all 50. We have I think this was first.
For like experiences, I know a lot of the experiences are kind of reserved for upperclassmen.
Yeah.
So is there a way that we can get our foot in the door early into internships and like service aside from the whole like EMS thing?
I'll let Ron answer.
Yes. So there's a lot of different ways to do it. First thing I would say is things like the career fair and different workshops and industry nights that we have are a good starting point. The other thing is a very low hanging fruit. Most of the student orgs do experiences that you're going to want to be a part of, and they actively recruit all the time, right? Especially during fall quarter, they're all trying to say, we're going to do this community project. We have this clinical that we want to target. We're going to fundraise for this mission or this specific event. And so there's a lot of things that even if you are just starting out, you can get involved with. And we even have summer opportunities that students have with zero experience apply to and still getting. So there's a lot of starting points, and we will start with the experiential guide as a starting point, but there's much more than that that you can start off with just within your first year.
2 in here, and then there's some over there.
Sorry, guys, we're gonna do our best to go in order.
I was just wondering, you're referring to experiences, do you mean those experiences are specifically pertaining to like biology or some sort of pre-med thing, or like if it's a part of our vision, but it's just completely extricable from medical ideas?
What do you think?
Probably,
Probably what? Which one?
probably not.
You don't think that they would count?
I mean, I think they were, I don't know, but I'm a bit confused on like what medical schools are looking for in their vision.
Man, we need to do a better job with talking about experiences then. The competencies are everything, right? Whatever grew you as a person, as a professional, talk about that. Even if you were a barista and there was a leadership component to that, you can add that to your application, right? Now, will it count as heavily as clinical hours in the hospital working directly with patients? No, but it still does count. So that's kind of the short answer.
Very interesting, thank you.
But also, everything matters at some point, so you might as well document it and then figure it out after the fact.
So it's a little bit more specific, but so for me and a lot of other people that I know, I had my biology 1 through 3 waived, like build 1 through 3, but you need a year of med school, or a year of biology for med school. So my question was, if I took upper division to do a year, is that like equivalent? Will that be fine as well? Med school, accept that?
Yeah, so if you take, it just depends, we got this question last time. If the medical school does not specifically, if they say something like AP credit, does not count, you can use XYZ coursework, you can use, and they'll list, microbiome, physiology, anatomy, whatever. To fulfill this 1 year requirement, then you're golden. You do not need to take your AP courses. If they are they will sometimes specifically list on their website, on their requirements, you cannot use AP credit to fulfill intro to biology. They're gonna be very specific, right? At that point, you will need to retake it if you want to apply to that school. I personally just say, if it's not that, if it's not the school that you're super interested in, go to another school, apply to another school. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work to retake those courses. You put a lot of work doing those AP courses, so I just don't like retaking. You guys retake.
You say that most med schools, like for example, UCSD med school, they require you to take Bill 1-3 or not? No?
Yeah. I'll just say this right now, UCSD School of Medicine puts on their website, everything is recommended because they don't want to deal with those questions. They'll say, prove to us you are proficient, and they'll leave it at that. Okay?
Yeah.
Question, where are we at? We're finding.
We'll have some in the middle too. We'll do our best. We're gonna do our best to get home.
How feasible is it to transfer, okay, so I just came in as a transfer, how feasible is it to transfer and go to that school without having a gap?
It's so funny, we have not gotten this question yet. It's feasible, it depends on what you did during your community college time. So we went over everything, right? We went over the coursework you need, the extracurriculars you need. So if you finished your coursework, right, and even we have to consider the MCAT as well. You need to take your MCAT your junior year, based on that timeline, and you need to complete the courses such as physics, biochem, etc., in order to take the MCAT. So it's almost like you have to pass the steps first before you can do the steps to apply. Like take the MCAT, for example, and then apply. It's feasible. We don't see it as often. We see our transfer students more often than not falling into the 73% of people that take a gap year. But I've seen it before, right? If you're prepared and you're ready, you're good to go. And you can go to drop-in hours and ask more questions. We'll try and come back to the front at the end.
How would you go about like finding a mentor, turning an interaction into something bigger, like a whole?
Turning an interaction with a professional, maybe?
Yeah, like how would you go, like talking to someone who wants to actually find a mentor?
Oh, okay, so like how would you specifically ask someone to be a mentor? How to build that relationship. So it's funny, we just did a whole course this summer called Career Launch, and we're gonna try and get that out to you guys too, because it is it's like a skill, right? I'm gonna try and answer this very simply. When you build a relationship or you meet with someone, it's like understanding how to talk to them and maybe add them, I would say add them on LinkedIn, get their email if they're comfortable, get their number if they're comfortable with texting, but at least LinkedIn and email is good enough. And you can just straight up ask them, even if you have to chat GPT a script to say, hey, I just want something like 200 characters to ask someone to be a mentor, right? You can do that because LinkedIn is usually 200 characters if you're reaching out to someone and you're not their friend yet. So I would say just ask, right? For professors, we got this question earlier, stay in contact with them quarterly, add them on LinkedIn, send them emails. It could be was thinking about the course this quarter, was thinking about you, or something that you mentioned, just wanted to give an update on where I'm at. Thank you for all you do. It can just be something so simple, and you're doing that periodically, so you're not showing up 2 or 3 years later and being like, hey, remember you write me a really good letter of recommendation. So it's a skill, and it's honestly something that we cover through career services quarterly. It's one of our quarterly workshops on our website on career.ucsd.edu. We cover networking, and we cover this in depth because these are questions that we get. So thanks for asking that.
I just have a quick question. So one, I saw for bio and chem, there's 4 different classes recommended, even though it says 1 year. So do 4 quarters count as a year more? Or is it 3 quarters? Like if it's a year of bio or a year of chem?
3 quarters. Whole series. Build 1, 2, and 3.
It said build 1 through 3 and then an upper division.
is that just like recommended? Like you could get away with just doing the 1.3 or like,
You need to do the upper division lab for medical school. Build 4, we actually don't have it on our list, but you may need it for your you may need it for your major requirements depending on your major. So yeah, it just depends.
second question is, as some of them said one course and 1 quarter, is that the same?
Nope, different. One course is generally, like, what's an example? Anatomy, physiology,
So, but yeah,
microbiome.
Yeah.
Microbiology is an example of one course, because it's not a year. That's 1 quarter. Mhm.
I also have questions, like, I would have for American medical schools, but because I'm an international student. And American med schools are like out of reach. If I wanted to go to the UK or Europe or Australia, would you help with the UCAT exams as well? Right.
to an extent. So we do have students that do international programs. Usually there's a lot of other considerations that are going to be a little bit more nuanced and tricky. I have got students that also apply. There's also other programs that are international that you still have a chance of getting into the US as residency, and we usually have to like a strategy and talk proof point of looking at those specific schools. That's usually a very deep dive, kind of probably more than one appointment, and usually when we're talking admission. We want to go over it in more detail, but we do have students that look at that. Shout out to the University of Queensland in Australia who visited UCSD because they actually took quite a few UC students in the past. I mean, that's a very successful international program where I have like 100 residency match rate. So there are.
I don't know if they're gonna kick us out at 5,
They might.
but I can stay a little later. Go ahead.
So I have a question about research opportunities.
Yeah.
Could you list some of like resources we have for research and finding.
Real portal.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
I was gonna pull up the list. But I would say Handshake is a good place to start. Research experience and applied learning, AKA REAL, REAL, portal, real.ucsd.edu, I think, or you can just
Yep.
search REAL portal. Those are the two main ones that we see for posting research. Otherwise, it's going to the faculty page of the person, the faculty member that you're interested in, looking at their research, doing research on their research, showing up to office hours, literally with a resume and being like, hey, I really enjoy what you're doing. I'm something that I'm interested in, something that I'm passionate about, whatever the case is. And you can ask if they're looking for somebody. I think that's the most effective way, personally, just like show up. Yeah, hopefully that helps. And on that list of experiential opportunities, there's a research tab for everyone at the bottom. So there's healthcare experiences, but there's so many different tabs that you can, and research is one of them. And those two, but I think there's like 10 different ones on there that you can look at. Yeah, there's a lot.
So standpoint, is joining the military or having veteran service opportunities, more likely gonna put you at a better standpoint in medical school?
Huh. I have, you talk a lot about this a lot, you can handle it.
So I actually used to work at an
I
institution
see.
where 75% of their students were either active duty or veteran. Not necessarily. What they will do though, is if somebody does do military experience, they actually have its own category for military experience, document hours and time. So that is a separate thing that they acknowledge that those requirements. Because the military requires like 7+ years of service sometimes, right? And so it's not necessarily a plus or negative. There is some benefit sometimes. So like, for example, some people in the military, they get tuition